Heads podcast is brought to you by Head Start Basketball.
A quiet gym is a scared gym, and a quiet gym is a soft gym. And our girls kind of took that to heart, that that they didn't want to be categorized as either of those two things. So I think that was important. And I think anytime that you can explain to kids why you expect something out of them, I think your buy-in from those kids is going to be exponentially higher than if you just say, do this because I'm telling you to do it.
Coach Matt Haddy has been coaching basketball for 18 years, and this upcoming season will be his 10th as a head coach. Matt is currently in his second year as the head girls coach at Mount Vernon High School in Mount Vernon, Iowa. Prior to taking the girls' position at Mount Vernon, Coach Haddy had only coached boys basketball. Matt got his first coaching job before his freshman year of college, jumping into coaching at a very young age. He has been with both very successful programs and programs that have really struggled. Matt's first head coaching job was at Lisbon High School in Lisbon, Iowa. Prior to his time there, the program had been almost non-existent, as the school had long been a wrestling hotbed. When Coach Haddy took the job, he had multiple people ask him if he was crazy, or if Lisbon even had a basketball program. Within 5 years, Coach Haddy took the team to the state tournament for the first and only time in school history and set the school record for wins in a season. Matt has coached at 5 different high schools and 1 college during his career. Along with his basketball coaching experience, he has coached multiple other sports. Currently, he's the defensive coordinator for the football team at Mount Vernon and has coached football for 10 years. Coach Haddy has also been a head baseball coach and head golf coach. You'll want to have pen and paper handy as you listen to this episode of the Hoop Heads podcast with Coach Matt Haddy from Mount Vernon High School in the state of Iowa. If you're enjoying the Hoop Heads podcast, please hop over to iTunes and leave us a rating and review, preferably 5 stars if you would. That helps other people find the pod and allows us to reach a wider audience so we can continue to grow the game. We appreciate all of you out there for being loyal listeners of the Hoop Heads podcast. Thanks. Hello and welcome to the Hoop Heads podcast. It's Mike Klinzing here with my co-host Jason Sunkel, and today we have from the state of Iowa and Mount Vernon High School, Coach Matt Haddy. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, guys. Looking forward to being a part of it.
Yeah, we appreciate you jumping on with us tonight, and we're looking forward to having a great conversation with you and learning a little bit more about you and your basketball story. So let's go back to the very beginning when you were a kid and how you got into the game of basketball for the first time, what you liked about it, and also maybe a little bit about what some of the other sports you were that you played when you were a kid.
Well, as a kid, I kind of did just about everything from a sports standpoint. My dad was a sports guy. He was actually a baseball player, really good baseball player in high school. Played a little bit at the junior college level, and then made the decision to give it up and go to a 4-year school. He figured out that the Yankees probably weren't going to be calling him time in the near future, so he kind of made that choice. But his kind of love of sports went over to me. I did just about everything: football, basketball, baseball, golf, everything outside of pretty much soccer. Soccer's a little too much running nonstop for me, and so I kind of stayed away from.
I'm with you. I never played a second of soccer when I was a kid, so I'm with you on that one, Matt.
That makes 2 of us. So kind of had an overall love for all sports growing up. In all honesty, probably early on, my passion was probably baseball. But I took that a little bit from my dad, just with that was his overall passion, and something that we did a lot of, whether just playing catch, playing wiffle ball, doing that kind of stuff. But then, from a basketball standpoint, just started to grow into the game. We had a hoop in our driveway, and a lot of times that's where a lot of my friends congregated, just because I had the adjustable hoop, so we could lower it down, whether it was as we were younger, so that we could make shots, or as we got older, so we could lower it down and we could all dunk on it.
For sure, I remember those days well. I remember those days. Yeah. We had a basket. We had a friend of mine, down the street from where he lived. There was a guy who had this. It was like maybe a half court, but he had a basket at each end, and one of the baskets was 10 feet, and the other one was about maybe 8.5. But it was a steel backboard rim. This thing was like super reinforced. You could literally hang on it, and like you'd have like 2 or 3 people doing chin-ups on it. So we used to go there and play on that all the time. So I could definitely relate to you getting the neighborhood kids together.
And I have a 4-year-old, and I lowered the basket so that he could quote unquote shoot on it. But now all we do is he shoots on it, and then I dunk right after because he thinks it's the most amazing thing ever. And I'm like, it's not that impressive. I'm not even having to jump to dunk there, bud. But
absolutely, I do the same thing when we have our youth camp at our elementary school, and I can lower the hoops down. And I dunk every once in a while until my back starts to hurt or something, and the young kids think it's great. But honestly, one of my best basketball memories when I was growing up is in our basement. A part of our basement was a concrete floor, and my parents got me this Iowa Hawkeyes kind of. It wasn't necessarily a mini hoop, but it was actually a hoop on a standard for inside. And on that concrete, I taped a three-point line, free throw line. I made it look as much like Carver Hawkeye Arena, where the Hawkeyes play, as I could. And there was a lot of basketball battles between myself and my friends growing up down in our basement, on that hoop. But really, for me, that's just growing up. That's what I remember is the sports, and that's what we did with my group of friends for fun. Whether it was we played wiffle ball a ton at a good friend of mine's house. He would keep track of stats. Yeah, I mean, I still own the longest home run ever hit in their backyard in their field. So, or it would be we'd strap on, which is extremely crazy when you look at it now with concussions and everything. We'd put on those hutch pads that were meant for Halloween costumes, and we'd just go after each other,
right?
Playing football, and we'd have 2-on-2 tournaments, 3-on-3 tournaments, whether it was at my place or buddy's place, or we'd do traveling tournaments where everybody would kind of have their home court. And we do league schedules. So for me, that's just always, when I was growing up, that's what it was. That's what we did. It was some kind of sport that we were doing, unorganized, and just having a lot of fun with.
So talk about your thoughts when it comes to that particular way of growing up. And obviously kids today don't grow up in the same way that you did or I did, where you're playing all those sports out in your backyard or on your driveway or at your friend's house. Most of the time now, I'm sure the girls that you're coaching are not doing those things. And probably on the boys' side, nobody's doing much of that either. Instead, they're playing, in an organized league with, a coach, with a parent, with referees, with people in the stands. How do you think it compares in terms of preparing a basketball player to be a good high school player? How would you compare the two systems?
Honestly, I don't think there is a comparison. But this is my outlook on things. When I was growing up, AAU basketball was not really a big thing. We played Salvation Army. That was kind of, our out of season. We played a buddy of mine's dad kind of got us signed up, coached us, and when we played in a Salvation Army league and a few tournaments, but it wasn't much. The majority of our stuff, like I said, was on our own. And I think the big difference with that is, it teaches you how to build relationships with kids on your own, as opposed to just kind of being shoved into it. This is who you're with. This is who you're going to play with. The other thing is, I think it develops a heck of a lot more toughness. Because as I'm sure you guys know, when you're playing and you're doing that kind of stuff, there's not many rules, or arguments, or whatever. But that was kind of how you got through things, and usually made you better friends because of the things that you were able to get through doing that. So I think that's the biggest difference. Is it's just that you learned so many more different things in terms of problem solving, mental toughness, physical toughness, than going and playing in these organized leagues, having coaches, playing all the time, and not learning some of those, I don't want to say, rules of the street, if you will, but just kind of the rules of the game that you picked up on your own, or maybe sometimes made on your own, that made it a lot more fun as you went through it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that that's one of the things that I tell people all the time. I feel bad for my own kids at times, and certainly for other kids that are growing up in this system. There's definitely positives to it in terms of skill development. I think kids get exposed to better coaching in a lot of cases earlier, but I do think they miss out tremendously on the fun piece of it that we had growing up, and picking your own teams and just playing with your friends and that kind of thing. And then I think the second thing that you hit on is I think there was a lot of intangibles that you learned that just can't be duplicated in an organized setting, whether it's, like you said, toughness, just being able to just figure out and manipulate and understand the relationships between people. And hey, we're going to pick teams, and we're going to set up the ground rules, and this bush is out of bounds over here, and if the ball goes over the garage, it's a home run, or whatever it might be. And I think kids today, if you just leave them to their own devices to organize a game, they struggle with that. So I would think that as a high school coach, do you find that some of those skills are maybe less than what they were when you first started? And if you do, what are some things that you do as a coach to kind of facilitate reenacting those skills, or bringing those skills to your players that maybe players 20 years ago or 30 years ago would have just brought to the table themselves?
I don't know if there's a huge change I've noticed, just because like I've been doing this for I think 18 years now. I think this is year 19 or 20 coaching, and I think even in that period of time there, you still had a lot more of parent organized activities as opposed to kid organized activities. So I think a big thing that at least that we try and do in our program is I give a lot of ownership to our girls on the things that I hate to say the things that I don't think matters much, but are things that aren't as big of a deal to me, but that are a big deal to them, so that, that they take that ownership, whether it's, I just had a conversation with our girls the other day about what are you going to wear on game days? Like for me, I could care less, but I know that's something that they think about. And instead of me just saying, this is what you're going to do, which is what so many of them have been put through on different things, they take ownership of that. Another thing that we like to do in practice from time to time is we just kind of, as coaches, kind of step back, saying anything really at all. And a big, that kind of serves dual purpose. It makes them do that decision making on their own, take that leadership on their own. But then the other big thing is communication, the big part of what we do. So it makes them talk at a consistent and high level in order for the drill to run smoothly. I think sometimes they don't realize how important that communication aspect is until it's on them to make sure that everything is organized and running smoothly, or it just doesn't happen.
How difficult is it for the kids that you've coached, both now and in the past, to develop that level of communication that you're trying to, instill in them? At first, are they kind of like, man, coach really wants us to talk that much and we don't really know how to do that? So you find yourself having to, I don't know if teach communication is the right way, but you have to say, hey, when I say I want you to communicate, this is what I mean, and then give them some concrete examples? Or how do you go about doing that? Or do you just kind of turn it over to them?
I think honestly, that's probably one of the hardest things that I battle in coaching, in probably in the two main sports that I coach, both basketball and football, is getting kids to talk at a consistent level, and a consistent rate. I think the biggest thing that they struggle with early on is confidence, and I think a lot of kids don't want to look bad or don't want to be embarrassed, so they're worried that are they saying the right things. So I think we really preach that even saying the wrong thing is better than not saying anything at all, because if I can get you to start talking, even if it might not be the exact terminology that we want you to use, then I know that I can then teach you the correct terminology. So I think that's a big part of it. I think the other part is I just don't think kids quite understand how important communication is. We, from a football standpoint, show our kids how important it is that you've got to be able to talk. You have to be able to talk assertively, or you just things aren't going to get done. And then we put a lot of onus on our players to make those calls and communicate, whether it's like I talked about with the practice drills or from a football standpoint. We put a lot on our back end, our secondary, and our linebackers to make sure that we're in the right coverages, calls, checks, and I make it very apparent to those guys, if a mistake gets made, now it's on you guys because you're not talking to get our guys in the right spot. And I think it's the same thing defensively. We talk a lot about in basketball defensively, if you don't talk, a lot of times we say, it's a selfish act, because if you're not talking on a screen, you're being selfish to your teammate, not letting them know that they're going to get screened. If you're not talking and help, you're being selfish to your teammates to let them know that you're there for them. And then we go as far as if you're not talking on the bench, not only are you being selfish because you're not helping the 5 people that are on the floor, but you're being selfish because now you're probably more worried about yourself than the good of the team and trying to help. And when you're on the bench, that's the best way that you can help our team is by communicating, especially on the defensive end.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to frame it when you talk to kids about, a lot of times, like you said, maybe they're embarrassed to talk. They don't know for sure, what am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to be doing in this situation? But when you frame it as, hey, if you're not talking, you're being selfish, it gives the kids another, what the word is, excuse to start talking because, you don't want to be perceived. They don't want to be perceived as being selfish. So I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it. And I think you make a great point that communication goes across sports. I mean, I don't think it's something that's just, important in basketball and not in football or vice versa. And you even think about, whether it's baseball or whatever sport it is that you're playing, the better teams are the ones that are always talking and communicating with each other, both off the court, off the field and also on the field. And I think it's something that's overlooked by a lot of coaches and especially parents and players, that they don't realize. Like if you go to a youth game and you watch a 5th grade basketball game, almost nobody's talking. And then you go and you watch a good varsity basketball game and, a lot of the kids are talking. And then you go and obviously watch a college game and every single player on that floor is talking. And so again, as you move up levels and kids have heard it over and over again and your better players start to realize that, that communication piece is such a huge part of what leads to your success.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we try and teach too is there's there's different kinds of talking. We don't expect our girls to be, unless it's their personality, we don't expect it to be the rah talking. We don't need, if we have it, it's great, but we don't need people if we're doing a drill on the baseline, just clapping and yelling just to yell. We have a purpose to our communication. Now, if we have leaders that's the way they want to lead and they want to get after people even when they're not in the drill, that's great. But for us, it's about the toughness aspect. And when you're on the floor, or on the bench, there's a purpose to what you're talking about and a reason that we're doing it.
Yeah. Do you find that with your teams that they respond better when you share the why with them behind some of the things that you're doing, or do you find that doesn't make that much difference?
I think it's huge, especially on the girls' side. I think that's one thing I've learned making the jump to coaching girls is they won't question, what you're doing, but a lot of times they want to know why. Why are we guarding this way, or why are we doing this way? And so I think it is important to explain to kids why You want certain things done in a certain way, and especially with communication. This is why we have to talk. For us, when I took over the girls program at Mount Vernon, a big part of it was just to start to develop, our toughness culture that we wanted to extend. I told them from the get-go, a quiet gym is a scared gym, and a quiet gym is a soft gym. And our girls kind of took that to heart, that that they didn't want to be categorized as either of those two things. So I think that was important. And I think anytime that you can explain to kids why you expect something out of them, I think your buy-in from those kids is going to be exponentially higher than if you just say, do this because I'm telling you to do it.
Yeah, I think that goes back to sort of the difference between the way we coach today and maybe the way that coaches were in the 1970s and 1980s, where it was more of, you're going to do it this way because I'm the coach, and you're not going to question, and the why shouldn't concern you as a player. Whereas today's players and today's parents and just people who are involved, there's many more people who want to understand why it is that you're doing something. I want to jump back, Matt, to the beginning of your coaching career and ask you, did you know at a young age that you wanted to coach, or was it something that sort of you accidentally fell into and grew to love or instantly loved? What was your path into the coaching profession?
I think it was something that I wanted to do from a pretty early age. My dad tells me that, and I can remember this a little bit, my dad tells me that from a very early age, I was able to watch games and pick up the inner nuances of the games. He said, when he coached, which is weird, I didn't really get it from my dad. My dad coached me in Little League Baseball for a little while and in some youth basketball, and he hated it. He hated coaching. It was just not what he wanted to do. But he always said that, he could remember me picking up on whether it was plays or, just different things quicker than other kids. And, I think that was kind of the springboard into it. The funny thing was, my first thought when I was, younger, was I was going to be a head football coach. That was my original thought process, was I was going to be a head football coach. Wanted to do it. Met Hayden Fry, the longtime coach at Iowa. Told him that someday I was going to coach for him. Actually, first told him someday I was going to play for him. And I'll never. His response to me was, he said, "Son, if you ever want to play for me, you're going to have to look like you got hit in the face with a frying pan." So I didn't really know what that meant at that point in time. But I thought, well, then that probably doesn't bode well for my football playing career.
Probably not. Go ahead.
But as time kind of went along, I kind of got basketball became kind of my better sport, better understanding. And so that's kind of the path I ended up going on. As soon as I finished high school, and I knew that I wasn't going to go on to play athletically after high school, I decided I was going to go to the University of Iowa. I knew that I wanted to stay involved, and from a lot of standpoints, it was just from a competitive standpoint. So in Iowa, you have to get coaching authorization. So I actually did that as soon as I graduated high school. So I got my first coaching job when I was 18 years old, my freshman year of college. And from that point on, it just became a passion for me.
So what did you coach? What did you coach that first year?
I coached freshman boys basketball at a school about 10 miles away from the University of Iowa campus, Clear Creek Amana High School, that I knew, that got my foot in the door, got an interview, obviously did well enough, either that or they just didn't have anybody else that wanted the job. But one way or the other, it worked out. But I can tell you, I remember my very first practice was a morning practice, and I tell you what, I was scared to death. I mean, I was like, I got to figure out thankfully it was a combined fresh soft practice. So, I had a little bit of leeway with our sophomore coach, who kind of helped me out. But from that point on, I had a really, really good group of kids, and just, kind of got more and more used to it. And it just became a lifestyle for me. That was kind of who I was. I was a basketball coach. I loved every part of it. I did everything that I could to be involved with it. I helped with our varsity program that year as well. And then that summer started working camps. Was fortunate to get in early with the University of Iowa camp. My uncle was actually the longtime sports information director at the University of Iowa. So I had some nice connections there that I got started working the Iowa camp when Coach Alford was there, and have worked it all the way through now with Coach McCaffrey. Worked the old Future Stars camps, and then got involved with Snow Valley as well. And I was fortunate. The school I coached at to begin with, Clear Creek Amana, was in the same league where Don Showalter coached at Mid Prairie. So I got to know Coach Showalter through coaching against him, and then developed that relationship, and then that built into Snow Valley, and then so that was kind of how it started. But it just was I loved every part about it. Loved being involved with it. I would do our fresh soft practices in the morning, and then I would go back to the school after school to help with the varsity practices, just so I could be involved as much as I possibly could.
What was it about the coaching that you loved? What piece of it did you enjoy the most, and is that still the same piece that you enjoy today about coaching? Was it the relationships with the kids? Was it the X's and O's? Was it building a winning team? Was it having a long-term impact? What was it about that first coaching job that cemented in your mind, hey, this is the direction that I want to go with the rest of my life?
It's funny. It started out probably almost 100% as the competition, and still being involved with the game of basketball and the X's and O's part. But it's amazing. It's amazing to me now. Obviously, I still love every part of that. But to me now, it is so much about the relationships with the kids, the current kids you're coaching, the kids you've coached, the lifelong relationships that you develop with those kids. I've actually got right now my assistant coach at Mount Vernon played for me at one of my coaching spots. When I got married, the three ushers in my wedding were the three captains from our state tournament team at Lisbon, where I coached. So for me now, it's become so much about the relationships that you build with kids, the impact that you have on those kids, watching those kids succeed, do things that they weren't aware that they were able to do, and then just being able to be a part of the successes that they get to go through, and then just being a part of those kids' lives on a daily basis has what it's transformed itself into. I'm not sure when I first got into it if I would have realized that's what it was going to turn into, but there's no question in my mind that's, to me right now, that is 100% the biggest thing that drives me in being involved with coaching.
What are some ways that you cultivate and develop those relationships throughout the time that a player is with you? Let's say they come into your program as a freshman, 4 years later they're graduating as a senior. What are some of the things that over the course of that time that you do to help build that relationship with the kids you coach?
Well, I think the most important thing is you got to get kids to understand that you care about them as a person and not just as a player for you. Any interview that I've done for a coaching job, that's usually one of the first things I talk about is if you can get a kid to understand that you truly care about them, they're going to do just about anything for you. And I think the biggest thing starting out with that is those kids have got to see you in lights other than just that coach relationship. So, they've got to see you at their other sport events. They've got to see you in the hallways of school, and having conversations with them that don't revolve around basketball or football or whatever it might be. So those are big things just from the get-go, to make them understand that you care about them more than just as a basketball player, football player, athlete, whatever it may be. I think from there, the things that you do in the off season, being able to spend time with those kids, outside of the gym structure, that's actually one of the things that I've really kind of enjoyed about coaching on the girls' side, is there are more things that you can do, in terms of that. We do a Secret Santa Christmas party, and that's probably not something that I probably would have done on the boys' side, but our girls love it.
Yeah, I could see that. So I'm gonna vouch. Coach Jason's laughing, but maybe he has the same story. But I laugh because I teach in an elementary school, and primarily the entire staff is female, and every year they do a Secret Santa, and of course I'm the one guy that doesn't. They're like, "Do you want to do that?" I'm like, "Nah, I'm good. I don't really want to participate in that."
I was gonna say when I got my new teaching job, I taught in Cleveland for 5 years, and then I moved to a suburb of Cleveland. My first year, I kind of got peer pressured into doing it, but I was the only. Then we have like 4 or 5 other guys on staff, but none of them did it. But of course, the ladies didn't tell me. They kind of just said, "Oh, you do this? It's it's something we do here." And I'm like, "Okay, whatever. It's the first year." And it was super awkward because I got a lady I didn't know and I didn't work with like directly, so I'm like saying like, "What do I even get you?" Like, so it's weird. And actually, one other thing I wanted to piggyback off of what you just said about like going and making sure you like seek them out in the hallway. Now, I teach at a intermediate building, so I teach in the 4 or 5 building, but our building's actually connected to the middle school, and it actually works out really nicely that my planning and my lunch coincide with the 7th and 8th grade lunch periods. So every single day, since like really when we were starting tryouts last week, I coach both boys and girls. I make a point to walk into the lunchroom in the building just to like check in, see how their day is going, because I think that helps me prepare for practice, because if they're having a rough day and I can see it on their face that they're having a rough day, I know what I'm getting myself into in a sense. I know it's not going to be all sunshine and daisies when they show up to practice. Maybe something rough happened, and that kind of clues me in. But at the same time, they see me other than, oh, hey, you're the guy I see for an hour and a half every day for basketball, and I think it really helped build a strong foundation for relationships. So I totally buy into what you said about like making sure that you're not just seeing them on the court and you're seeing them throughout the building.
Well, it's huge. I actually, for the past 2 years, got out of being in the school building and went into the sales world. I took a chance on something, and sometimes money makes you jump at something, as I'm sure both of you know. Education, not exactly the top end of the financial spectrum. Sure. When it comes to that, my wife teaches elementary as well, so but I realized that the thing that I missed, I at one point I thought, well, if I could find a job outside of the school that would allow me to keep coaching, that'd be great. But what I realized was, it wasn't the coaching, it was the seeing the kids every single day in the school setting, and just talking to them. I've got a girl that plays for me right now. It's hilarious. We keep track of how many times we can say hello to each other during the school day, just as whether it's in passing, whatever it may be. I think currently our record is 8, so we keep track of, just how many times we say hello to each other. We had during homecoming week, we had they had dress up days, and I got to take pictures with with a couple of our girls that were dressed up as they were animals, so they were dressed up as one was a giraffe and one was an elephant, and just and it's just little things like that I really had missed about being in the school. So, I took a pay cut, to get back into the school, but it's something that I wouldn't change at all. I think it's so important to see those kids on a daily basis, and just like you said, know if something's going on, being able to see them at lunch, being able to see them in passing time. One thing I try and do every morning is I sit basically right inside of our entryway and just say hello to kids as they come in for the day, and whether that's some of our athletes or not athletes. It's just, I think, for me, it's a great way to start my day, and hopefully a great way to start the day for those kids as they come in.
Yeah, I think when you get an opportunity to greet your kids, to see them throughout the day, I think you're much better off as a coach. I know that it's a challenge, especially when you have a head coach who's not in the building. Just those daily small little connections that you're describing, I think, are huge when it comes to building that player-coach relationship. And I can kind of speak to that a little bit. When I was a varsity assistant coach in the school district where I work, my building was right across the parking lot from the high school, and yet I still felt somewhat more disconnected than the other two coaches that were part of our staff, because they were both in the high school where they would see the kids every day and they could communicate directly. And I was kind of always, I was just a tiny bit out of the loop, both with, the coaching staff and with, just updates on, hey, we got to move practice here or do this there, or just, connecting with the kids on a daily basis. So I always think that when, you can have a coach in the building, it's a very important thing, just for those very reasons that you're describing. When you think about your current staff and staffs you've had in the past, how has that breakdown been in terms of the guys that have been part of your staff being in the building or not being in the building?
For the most part, a lot of them have not been in the building. When my first head coaching job was at Lisbon High School, which is kind of funny, is that's where actually my wife teaches there now after we met. But it's like 2 miles away from Mount Vernon, where I'm at right now. So when I was there, I did not have any coaches. I was in the building for 5 of the 6 years that I was the head coach there, but I did not have any staff members that were in the building. Currently, now at Mount Vernon, I have staff members that are in other buildings, which I think is actually kind of nice. I have one of my assistant coaches is in the junior high, which I think is great, because now she can see students that I don't see, because we're in split buildings. I have a new assistant that I just hired, who's a former Mount Vernon player, who's long-term subbing in the district. Both of my junior high coaches are in the middle school as well. So I think that's so huge, just for them promoting the sport, promoting our program, and getting kids excited about basketball. My top assistant who played for me at Lisbon does not work in the building, but that's a sacrifice I can make, just because he and I work so well together, because we've been together since I've known him since he was in 8th grade, and then he's just kind of come all the way up through. So, it's nice if you do have staff members in the building, but I'm not sure it's a necessity. I think it's more important that you have the right people on your staff. If the right people happen to be in your school building, then that's an added bonus. But I think the number one most important thing is you got to have the right people on your staff that care about kids, that are in it for the right reason, and that are going to push the same type of standards and culture that you're going to push from the top.
Yeah, I think having assistants that are on the same page is a big key. What's the number one or two traits that you look for when you're going to hire an assistant coach? What are the things that are most important to you when it comes to putting together your staff?
I think number one would probably be loyalty. Obviously loyalty to myself as the head coach. You've obviously got to have somebody that that you can trust, but even more so loyalty to the kids. Because that's in the long run, that's what it's all about. They have to be loyal to the kids. The kids have to know that they can trust those people. Because as you and I both know, there's a lot of times that a kid would rather talk to an assistant coach about something than the head coach. So you've got to have that person that's going to be loyal to those kids, but then in turn be loyal to the head coach. In terms of dealing with that type of stuff. And then I think the second thing is it's got to be somebody that's passionate. Not only passionate about the sport that they're coaching, but passionate about doing things the right way, passionate about developing relationships with kids, passionate about helping kids succeed, passionate about helping kids gain valuable experience through basketball, and just have a great passion for working with young people on a daily basis.
Now, with you coaching football in the fall and then heading into the basketball season as the head coach, what are some of the challenges that you face? And I'm assuming that in some respects you might rely on the members of your staff maybe more than somebody who is not also coaching football. Can you describe maybe the challenges of coaching both football and basketball in today's high school setting?
Well, I think, a lot of it just depends on, to an extent, our success level. Unfortunately, it's not the case this year, as we did not qualify for the playoffs. But, we are in there's always a possibility, depending on how far our football program would go, where we would still be playing when our first week of basketball practice would start. So from that standpoint, it's a juggling. Obviously as head coach, I would find a way to be at both of those practices. But what I really rely on my assistants for during the fall is running a lot of our open gyms on Sunday nights, because our open gyms usually coincide with the same time that we have our football staff meetings for the upcoming week. I rely on our assistant coaches to open the gym, be there to help the girls. In Iowa, we can't actually work with the kids once the school year's there, but we have someone there basically just to supervise and have the gym open for the kids. I rely on them to kind of help with some of our youth program stuff, in terms of just being involved. That's one of the nice things. One of my assistants, she has a sixth grade daughter, so she's involved quite a bit with our youth program. So, I kind of pass a lot of that stuff off to her in terms of that. We try and make it just because our kids at Mount Vernon are really, really well-rounded. I mean, we do not have very many kids, if any, who do just one thing, so there's not a lot of basketball things going on during the fall other than the open gyms that we provide on Sundays. So, it does become a nice balance between football and basketball with that. But it is nice to have, a couple coaches that are available to handle some basketball issues, just some of the administrative stuff, as we start looking at, things that I look at as stupid stuff like apparel order forms, meals for the buses, travel schedules, that kind of stuff. The things that you want to have taken care of before you actually jump in to the practice portion of your season.
So I'm assuming that at Mount Vernon that there's a good relationship between the football staff, and obviously you're not on the boys coaching side of it, but I'm assuming there's a good relationship between the football staff and the boys basketball staff.
Yes, and actually, when I first came, so this is my 4th year at Mount Vernon. So my first 2 years at Mount Vernon, I was the boys' varsity assistant coach, and then jumped over to the girls program. So yeah, there's a good relationship there. Based on the fact that I was on the staff at one point. Our head boys coach, actually, he's not technically on our football staff, but he actually comes to football practice about twice a week and runs our scout team for us. Just so there's that, kind of that nice dynamic and relationship that the working together with both. We're really fortunate at Mount Vernon that just all of our sports, for the most part, work really well together. Both out of the fact that we have, probably I would say one of the best head coaching staffs that you'll find at a school our size in our state. But then also the fact that like I said, we just have so many kids that do so many things that if you didn't have coaches that were willing to work together, it would really hurt a lot of the programs that are very successful in our school.
Without going into specifics, have you ever been in a situation where that hasn't been the case, where you were in a situation where coaches were more, let's say, territorial about their athletes and trying to keep them playing one sport year round or focusing on that one sport? Or in your experience in the places that you've been, has it always been sort of that congenial relationship between different staffs of different sports?
Unfortunately, yeah, I have been. I was in a spot where this was a baseball thing. I was a head baseball coach, and during the summer, one of our other programs scheduled basically just I don't know if you want to call it a camp trip or just a fun trip during our baseball season, and really promoted it and couldn't understand why we didn't want baseball kids to go. My first year as a baseball coach, we lost about a third of our kids that went on this just because the expectations for baseball hadn't really been set prior to me taking over, because it had been a struggle. So yeah, I've been in those situations, it's tough. It's tough to have really good athletic culture as a whole when you do run into those things. I think that's definitely one of the special things about Mount Vernon is we don't have that. Our athletic culture is very good, and I think that shows up in the successes that we have year round. You'd be really hard pressed to find a program at the varsity level at our school that you would say, well, that's a down program, or that's a program that's struggling.
Yeah, I think that's nice that when you have programs that are all finding success, and then they're also willing to be able to work together with other sports. And I think one of the things that sometimes people forget when the situation that you described, where you have I don't know if animosity is the right word, but you just have some misunderstandings between coaches of what the expectations are for players in and out of season, that when those misconceptions are there, people forget that it's about the kid, it's about the athlete, it's about what's best for them. And I think that one of the things that our culture is slowly losing is the ability for kids to play more than one high school sport. In a lot of places, it's becoming increasingly difficult that if you're not doing that particular sport year round, and not necessarily from a skill development standpoint, from a standpoint of the coaches have an open gym here, the coaches having voluntary workouts there, and all these different things that are going on, whether it's basketball, soccer, baseball, football, whatever the sport is, you just see it more and more where there's so many more year-round opportunities that coaches expect kids to be there, and then when they're not, those kids kind of fall off the radar. And I think it's a shame that we're missing out. Kids aren't getting the opportunity to play as many sports. It sounds like at Mount Vernon that hasn't crept in yet, but I know we see it around here quite a bit, that kids just they're kind of being forced to choose, not because they necessarily want to, but just because again, it's everything has become almost nearly year round. Do you see that? Maybe not at Mount Vernon, but in some, some places around you.
Yeah, I mean, and even at Mount Vernon, things are, I don't know if I'd say year round, but we have a lot of, all of our sports push their off season work. Just because you guys know as much as I do, it's important.
For sure.
Especially in the skill based sports, which basketball is definitely one of those. But the nice thing that we have is the ability to work with each other to set up that schedule where kids aren't being put in a position where they have to make a choice. We're not going to have a basketball event on the same time that a volleyball event's going on. Because one of the things that we usually do in the summer is, play in some kind of Sunday night league. Volleyball does as well. So myself and the volleyball coach usually sit down, in the spring and say, all right, here's how we're going to split up our groups, so all of our girls have opportunities to do both volleyball and basketball. It's kind of funny when our girls' job came open at Mount Vernon. Like I said, I was the boys' assistant coach. The job posting was sent out to everybody in the district, and probably within about 2 minutes, I got an email from our volleyball coach saying, you need to apply for this, or to your point, apply for this, and so, which I respect a lot, because it would have been very easy, for her, and she's had a ton of success in volleyball, to maybe hope for somebody that wasn't going to push the kids very hard, or that was going to come in, that she would be able to reel the girls to, volleyball only. But that's not how she operates. She was more concerned with getting somebody in that was going to push the kids, that was going to push multi-sport athletes, that was going to continue to build on the success that we had on the girls' side of things, athletics. And I think that just right there shows the commitment to working together to make sure that it can be as good of an experience for everybody, and that all of our kids can get as many opportunities to do as much as they possibly want as well.
Where do you think that culture came from? Why do you think it developed that way, or what is it about Mount Vernon that has enabled that particular feeling between coaches to flourish, so you do have such great relationships between the staff? Is that something that comes from the athletic administration, the school administration, just something that has developed over time because of the individual people in those jobs, or what do you attribute that to?
I think first and foremost, I think it starts with we have a group of coaches that just get it. We have coaches that understand at our size of school, we can't afford to pull people away or possibly push people away, and then keep a competitive program, because we have so many girls that volleyball is important to them, softball is important to them, soccer is important to them, track and field is important to them. So we have to build that and allow that. So I think that's first and foremost, is that we have head coaches that get it. I mean, we have head coaches that have coached for a long period of time. We have head coaches that have coached at the collegiate level. We have head coaches that have won state championships. So I mean, we have head coaches that understand it. I think, then when you go from there, I think we have administrators that get it as well. Both our principal and our AD, have been head coaches, so they understand what coaches go through, and in a lot of ways what coaches need to be able to do to keep their programs successful. And I think just the makeup of our community. I mean, it's a college community. Cornell College, a Division III school, is in Mount Vernon. So the makeup of the community and the parents that we have definitely helps with that. And then I think we have a lot of people in our community, in our district, that expect our programs to be successful. And I think because of that, they understand for the most part what it takes to be successful, and a lot of that then they allow, for the most part, us as head coaches do the things that we know it takes to be successful.
Sounds like it's just a great place to be able to coach and make an impact on kids, like the things that you've already talked about in terms of building up your program. So let's talk a little bit about your decision to move from the boys side of coaching, where you obviously have spent the bulk of your coaching career, and move over to the girls side. So when the job opened up and the volleyball coach immediately is recommending you to go over and take the job, what was your thought process? Were you immediately thinking, hey, I want to do this, or were you thinking, hey, there's no way I want to go over there and do that? And just describe what that process was like and what you went through to make that decision.
It was interesting. My first head coaching job, like I said, was at Lisbon High School, and I was the head boys coach there for 6 years, and had a good amount of success there. Within my 5th year there, we went to the state tournament, which was the first and only time that Lisbon's been to a state tournament. And then after my 6th year, I got an opportunity to go to a bigger school with was an administrator type role within the school. So I took a chance at it, and it was a struggle for 2 years. It was a place that had not had a lot of success. After 2 years, due to budget cuts, my job there got cut. So that job was actually probably 35, 40 minutes away from where my wife and I live. My wife continued working at Lisbon, where I had been at, so I was commuting. So it allowed me to come back to this area. And it's kind of funny how I ended up at Mount Vernon. Was the boys' head job opened up at Mount Vernon at that time, and I applied at Mount Vernon and was one of 2 people to interview for that job. The other person was Ed Tim. Ed had been the head coach there previously. Teaches there, got out for a couple years. His son played collegiately, wanted the time to be able to watch his son play. Ed had won a state title there. Actually, it was funny that the year we went to the state tournament at Lisbon, and Mount Vernon was in the state tournament as well. Actually won the state championship. So we had 2 teams, different classes within 2 miles of each other, both playing in the state basketball tournament, which was kind of a really neat deal. And I had gotten to know Ed a little bit during that time frame. So when the interviews came along, I interviewed for the boys' job, and one of the people on the interview committee was the head football coach as well. And he had known that I had coached football. I coached football at Lisbon, was defensive coordinator there, like I am at Mount Vernon now. We had a lot of success there too, won a state championship. And so during that process of the basketball, he kind of reached out to me. He said, hey, regardless of what happens with the basketball, would you be interested in coming on and coaching football with me? And I said, well, yeah, I think that's something I'd like to do, regardless of what happens. And they ended up going with Ed, which I completely agreed with, because Ed's probably one of the best basketball coaches that I've ever been around. And then when Ed took the job and knew I was coming to do football, he reached out to me and he said, what would it take for you to come on my staff? And at that time I wasn't really sure, after not getting that head job, what I wanted to do from a basketball standpoint. The 2 previous years at that other school that I had went to after Lisbon really took a toll on me, just with the results and just some of the things that went on during that time. So I wasn't sure, but when Ed reached out to me, he's like, I'd really like to have you on my staff. What would it take? And I said, well, you know what, if I can come in and just be your varsity assistant, not have to worry about coaching my own team, whether it be sophomores or whatever, and just learn from you from a couple of years, for a couple of years, I think that'd be something that I really enjoy. And in all honesty, that's probably one of the best things that I ever did. Just, taking a step back and being an assistant for a couple of years, and learning from Coach Tim and how he ran his program, how he did things. Coach Tim was a longtime college coach as well before getting back into the high school ranks. So that really kind of recharged me from a basketball standpoint. And in all honesty, when I agreed to come back or join his staff, our AD said, hey, our current girls coach, is up there in age, I don't know how many years he's got left, but if he would ever decide to give it up, would that be something that maybe you'd be interested in down the road? Because I know you'd like, you've been a head coach and everything. I said, it'd be something I definitely would be interested in at least talking to you about. So I spent those 2 years with Ed. Loved it. And just, learned from him, in all honesty, he completely changed my coaching style, my philosophy in terms of how I do things, what I deem as important from a basketball standpoint now in comparison to where I was prior to working with him. So the girls' job came open after those 2 years, our volleyball coach reached out to me and said, you need to apply for this, and then Ed said, he goes, you need to do this. This is something that if you want to be a head coach again, this would be a good spot for you. You've kind of gotten yourself back into it with being an assistant coach. He said, I think this would be a great fit for you, for those kids to impact a different set of kids that you wouldn't normally do. And so for me, that was coming from him. That was the really big push. And then just finally just deciding that, I was ready to be a head coach again and be the guy in charge again. And so just knowing the success that the girls program had and being able to stay in Mount Vernon and everything was really kind of the push to make that jump.
I coach both boys and girls, like I said before, and I'm just curious, like, how hard of an adjustment was it from going from coaching the boys to the girls? Because obviously the style of play tends to be vastly different, depending on situations. But what were some roadblocks / adjustments that you had to make to how you coach the girls in comparison to coaching the boys?
In all honesty, from a basketball standpoint, I'm not sure that I've changed a whole lot. I do things very similar to the way I did with the boys. My expectations are the same. I think, as we both know, to an extent, the way the game is played is a little bit different. But in terms of how I coach, it's not a whole lot different. I told the girls that when I first met with them, when I was introduced after taking the job. Now, I did tell them, which I think they enjoyed quite a bit. I said, now the Coach Haddy that you see on the football sideline on Friday nights will be very different than the Coach Haddy that will be working with you guys in basketball. So that's a little different atmosphere than the basketball arena. But that's kind of one thing that I've kind of prided myself on, and I think our girls enjoy is that I coach them the absolute same as if I was coaching the boys. I think where it becomes a little bit different is some of the things we talked about earlier in terms of the relationship building, some of the team aspects of some of the things that you do, the camaraderie, that type of stuff. But in terms of what I demand of them, what I've asked of them, how we play, is very similar, if not the exact same, as if I was doing it on the boys' side as opposed to the girls' side.
So you said when you worked with Ed for those 2 years, so you come off being a head coach and you go back and you're an assistant, and you said that during that time you learned some things that kind of shifted what you thought was the most important things that you should be focusing on when you're coaching. So what were some of those things that you learned from him that you maybe didn't use in your previous stops, but now in your new position with the girls that you're incorporating into what you're building into your program?
Well, when I first got started, when I was at Lisbon, some of the things we were much more of a tempo team. In fact, we went through a little bit of stretch where we ran. I don't know how familiar you are with the the Grinnell College system,
Yep.
which is the So we
Getting up,
ran.
you were getting up and down a little bit.
We were, so we shot a lot of threes. We pressed a ton, and did a lot of that, those type of things. Mixed defenses, did things like that. But what I took from Ed is, what I really learned is, there's certain things that you can control every single night, regardless if you're at home, on the road, whatever it may be. And those things are, how hard you play, the way you defend, and the type of shots you get. So I went from, coach, that we were going to press and get up and down and play multiple defenses, to now where for us zone is a 4-letter word. We guard people, I joke with our girls all the time, and I joke with coaches, friends of mine, as well. I've got a good friend of mine, Jacob Brindle, who's the coach at Cascade High School, who for the boys side, and they just won a state title playing all 2-3 zone. And I joke with him all the time about, it's amazing to me that he was able to win a title playing that lazy style of defense, but for me, what I learned from Ed was those things you can control. If you play hard every single night, if you defend your tails off every single night, those two things you can take with you and hang your hat on, regardless, because you're not always going to shoot the basketball very well. It's not, you're not always going to score it very well. And especially at a place like Mount Vernon, where what we have is what we have. We're never going to have girls who are basketball dominant. We're never going to have girls who are going to spend a ton of time developing basketball skills just because of how well-rounded they are and all the different things they do. But what we do have is we do have athletes, and we do have girls who are committed to working really hard and who are very coachable, so it fits what we do. So we take a ton of pride in how hard we play, how hard we practice, how and how well we defend. And offense for us is very secondary. We are going to make sure that we are as good as we can possibly be defensively every single night, because in my belief, and this is a big thing I take from Ed, if you're good defensively, you're going to give yourself a chance every single time out. That's the way it is. I joke with our girls all the time, and my top assistant who played for me in the Lisbon days when we were getting up and down, he'd like to see us score a little bit more and get up and down. But I joke with him, I said, you know what, all it takes for us is, if we do our job, is 1 or 2, and I'd be okay with a 1 or 2-0 win. But that's probably also the football D coordinator in me as well, from that. But those are the big things, and then just valuing possessions, and just making girls understand, that we can get the shots that we want to get. We don't have a shot clock in Iowa. I would not say that we're a team that stalls by any stretch of the imagination, but we are a team that makes sure that we're going to get the shot that we want to get, that we're going to dictate what the tempo is each night. So those have been the biggest things, is just taking pride in how hard we play, how physical we play, how well we defend. We talk about our practices, and I'm sure everybody talks about this, but our girls firmly believe that there's nobody other than our boys who practice like we do. The things that we do, the physicality of our practices, and just, we joke all the time that there's only one other team in the state that practices like we do, and we say that they also practice in the same gym that we do. So, and our girls have bought into that, and that's a big part of who we are and what we do.
So when you sell that as your identity, is that just a daily reminder, just a daily expectation that you set with the girls, and is that kind of how it gets instilled, is just day by day, minute by minute, making sure that they understand what's expected in terms of playing hard, competing, valuing possessions, and all those other things that you talked about? Is it just a minute by minute expectation that you set for them?
Absolutely. Every drill, basically every drill that we do in practice revolves around those things. So if you're not doing those things, you're going to get called out during those times. We might be doing defensive shell drill, but if you turn the basketball over, you're going to hear about it. It's not necessarily an offensive drill, but we're still going to hammer home those things that we feel are vitally important. We keep track of different things, not every day, but we do a lot of pluses and minuses, and minuses usually basically revolve around whether it's turning the basketball over, missing box outs, those type of things. But, we really, emphasize the pluses in terms of getting on the floor for loose balls, proper closeouts, great communication, different things like that. So it's gotten to the point where, and I love this, one of our big things defensively is we don't give up the middle of the floor. So back this summer when we were starting to integrate our incoming freshmen into our summer program and having them play with our girls, I got a kick out of it. We had a couple of our seniors who kept getting upset because some of our freshmen would give up the middle of the floor, and they didn't know how to handle it because they just, it's so ingrained in them that's what you do, that they got really upset with those freshmen because they kept giving up the middle of the floor just because they didn't, or those incoming freshmen, because they didn't know any better. And for me, that I love that because it shows that our kids understand and are committed to that, and buy into that, and just know that's what we're about. And I think they've gotten to realize too that that gives us the best chance to win. I can remember looking at last year, I can remember maybe 3 or 4 teams that we played last year where I looked out pregame warmups and said, yeah, we're probably more talented than the team we're playing, and we won 16 games. So I think our kids understand that by doing that, it gives us the best chance to win. And I think they've gotten to enjoy it. When we go play in the summer, and we play, and our girls are all over the place on the floor, talking, communicating, flying around defensively, and it drives other teams nuts because they're thinking, well, it's just the summer, we don't why, but that's who we are, and our girls eat that up. So that's a really big part of what we do and how we get to be where we want to be.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're definitely moving your culture and your expectations in the direction that you want them to go. If you think back to, this is a 2-part question, if you think back to before you started, your first year last year, what was your biggest challenge going into last season? And then to top that off, what do you see as your biggest challenge now heading into your second season?
Our biggest challenge going into last season was the things that we were going to do and did were completely foreign from anything that those girls had ever done before. And this is not a knock on, the program prior, because they had success. They went to a couple state tournaments, won a lot of games, but how they did things was very, very different from how we were going to do things. Their practices were very, very differently structured than how ours were going to be. The style of play was very, very different than how our style of play was going to be. So that biggest thing was just getting them to understand the expectation of how hard we expect you to not only play, but even more so how hard we expect you to practice every single day. It's not just we expect you to show up Tuesday, Friday night and play hard on game nights. We expect you to practice extremely hard Monday night at practice, Thursday night at practice, Wednesday night. Every single night they have to practice a certain way. We talk about all the time that with what we have a very thin margin for error. So in order for us to be as successful as we can possibly be, we have to practice a certain way. We have to play a certain way. and we had to get that in those girls' minds and in that mentality that that's how it was going to be. And and I think that's one of the great things about coaching girls is, for the most part, they want to be taught. Like our girls last year, part of it is they were welcoming a change, but they wanted to be coached. They wanted to be coached. They wanted to see new things. They wanted to be part of different things. So that made it a lot easier for us to instill a lot of that stuff. But that was definitely the biggest change was just how hard we expected them to practice. In fact, I get a kick out of this. I've got a couple of our returning seniors this year who tell me the story of last year going the first day of practice. They had a countdown until practice started, and they basically they were just a little bit frightened as to what was to come, because a lot of them had seen what our boys' practices had looked like the years prior, while I was coaching with the boys. So they kind of had an idea of what our practices were going to look like. So they joked that they kept looking at their watch and telling each other, well, we only got 15 minutes till practice starts. It's 5 minutes till practice, and it just, but they learned to, what we were looking for, and learned to embrace it and learn to love it a little bit. So that was the biggest challenge last year. The biggest challenge this year, I think, will be to maintain that level of play. We lost our best overall player, best scorer, who averaged I think about 16 a game for us, and for a team that only averaged right around 40, that's a good chunk of points. So we won't have a single person that will be able to replace what she did for us, but we'll look to make that more of a group effort. I think we can be more balanced. We've got to find some people who that can replace. We had a couple girls last year that really brought some real toughness, tenacity to what they did on the floor. So we've got to find some people to replace that. And we've got to be better offensively. I get that. I mean, I know that our calling card is going to be defense, but I look at last year we gave up 40 points or more, I think, 3 times all year, and we still lost 7 games. So we've got to find a way to be better offensively, but be able to still fit it into what our overall philosophy is. So we can't be a get up and down transition team and try and score more and still ask our girls to play the style of defense that we want them to play and play as hard as we expect them to play. Now, one thing we have to be able to do is we have to be able to be a little bit more lenient with what they do offensively, and be able to live a little bit with, so maybe some shots that I wouldn't have said were great shots last year, just to build confidence and get a better rhythm going offensively. So that way the big thing is to continue to develop confidence offensively, integrate some new kids into our rotation, some younger kids into our rotation, and then just continue to build. It is still only year 2. I thought we did a really nice job last year of building where we want to be, defensively last year in our style of play defensively. But I think we can get even better, this year, now that, a lot of them have been in it a year. They understand it, understand what we're trying to do. So now the goal will be to build on that, as well as find a way to be better offensively, but still fit within the overall scheme of what we're trying to do.
Last question related to your program at Mount Vernon, and that is, how do you go about, as the head varsity coach, connecting with the youth players in your community and building that program? Can you describe maybe what the process is that you have in place, or what are some of the things that you're doing to connect your program with the younger kids in the community that are eventually going to end up as varsity players for you in the future?
probably not as much as I probably should. My big thing with youth basketball is, and I try and, relay this to our youth coaches as much as possible. For me, I really don't care what they run at the youth levels. I tell them you don't run zone defense because they're never going to play it when they get
right.
to the high school level, but they've got to have fun. From before I took over is, we had, for whatever reason, we would lose kids from that 7th, 8th grade to then when they would become freshmen. We'd have a lot out at the junior high level, but then by the time they became freshmen, those numbers weren't there anymore. So we made some changes there with coaches and with expectations. They're just to make it very, very well understood that the biggest thing for them is you've got to get them from youth, whether it starts at that 3rd, 4th grade level, whether it's junior high. The big thing is none of that matters if they don't ever get to me. If they don't get to our high school program, then all that stuff that you did, the tournaments that you did, all those things, none of it matters if they don't actually end up getting to the high school program and playing. And I think you see so much now just kids getting burnt out because all the different things that they're doing, and all the different tournaments and traveling and practices, multiple times a week and playing all year round, and they just say it's enough, and so one big thing is as I try and push the fun aspect, whether it's through our youth camps, I'll spend some time with our junior high programs in practices. I'll swing in, it's probably especially these next couple weeks before we start officially on November 5th, and spend some time with our junior high kids, see them practice, make sure that I'm visible at their junior high games when I can be. I'll try and swing in from time to time to our youth teams practices, just to it's never a situation where it's I'm coming in to run the practice or tell the coaches you need to be doing this. It's more so just to be seen and kind of project that that fun atmosphere of what we're trying to do. And in all honesty, my biggest salespeople for our youth kids are the kids that are currently in our program. I use our girls a ton, whether it's being around our junior high kids, whether it's being around those young kids. We work a little bit with, and we're going to do more this year, of putting our varsity kids in the elementary school, doing some reading programs, some different things within the PE classes with some basketball focus there, and just so that they get used to and seeing our girls and being a part of it. There, one thing we did last year, which I think was great, we did a youth night during one of our games. We invited every single one of our youth teams, anybody involved with youth basketball, came to the game, got in for free. They played at halftime. They were in the locker room. It was a big win for us that night, so they all came in the locker room with us, took pictures with our girls. We're involved with that. We started it after our first conference win. When I took over, I surprised the girls, and I took in a big water bottle and I shook it up and doused all the girls, and we had fun. So the young kids got to kind of be a part of that, because that's kind of our deal now. When we have big wins with that. So my big thing is, is we, I want them to have fun. Our head football coach says, and I believe this is great when he talks about, youth football and youth football coaches, when they ask him, well, what should I be doing this? What should I be doing this? And he says, the most important role that you should have is making sure who's bringing the snacks at the end of practice or after a game, because let's be honest, that's what those kids are going to remember, is going for ice cream afterwards or whatever, so it's so much for me, and I've changed a ton. In my previous spots, I tried to be involved immensely in the youth programs, and that's one of the things that, in all honesty, burnt me out. And I just, I said, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to trust that we've got good people involved with our youth programs. And I'm just going to push that those kids have got to have fun. And your number one goal as a youth coach is to make sure those kids, by the time they're freshmen, they get to our program.
Yeah, I love what you said. The three things that you mentioned there. One, having fun. So often we forget at every level of every sport that ultimately the reason why we all started playing was because it was fun. And so I think that to hear you say that is something that any coach out there who's listening can take away and make sure that that's the basis for what you're doing, which is especially important on the youth level. That leads to your second point, which was you don't want to burn kids out. I know that one of the things that I always think about is the fact that I just don't buy that there are that many 8 or 9-year-old basketball, football, baseball players that want to practice for 2 hours, 3 days a week, and then go travel an hour or two and play in 5 or 6 games in a weekend when they could just be at home, wrestling with their brother or, going outside and climbing a tree or whatever the case might be. And I think we do tend to burn kids out. I forget the exact statistic, but it was something to the effect of that by the age of 13, like 70% of the kids who had been playing youth sports are no longer participating. And so I think that's something that is not just an issue with basketball, but it's an issue across youth sports. So it's good to hear you address that particular thing. And then the last thing that you said was the connection between your varsity players and the younger kids in the community. And I know that that's one of the things that, to me, is one of the easiest things for a varsity coach to do. It's easy to put your players in front of those younger kids in different ways, whether it's, again, going in and doing something at the school, doing a clinic, doing a community service, bringing in the kids for a game and getting them into the locker room like you described. I think those are all things that if you just take the time as a varsity coach to plan those out, I think those are great. So, Matt, those are all fantastic ways that, even though, as you said, you kind of got burned out on having your hand directly in youth basketball, I think that those things, if you're getting those 3 points across to the people who are involved in your youth basketball program, then you're accomplishing something. I want to hit on one final topic with you before we get out of here, and that is, I know at the very top of the show, you talked about working both at Snow Valley, and we've obviously talked to, if people are listening to a lot of our podcasts, we've talked to a lot of guys who've had nothing but great things to say about Snow Valley, and then you also talked about working at the University of Iowa's basketball camp. So can you talk about what you've been able to, obviously you're putting a lot into those, and I'm sure the kids and other coaches that are around you are getting things out of your participation, but what are you getting out of participating in those things that make you a better coach when you come back to Mount Vernon?
I'd say the biggest thing for both of them is the relationships that you build. You guys know just as well as I do that coaching, maybe more than in a lot of professions, is so much about the relationships that you build. And so, some of my best friends that I have are guys that I've met working at camps. I've got great relationships with guys that you've had on this podcast. Greg White. If it wouldn't have been for Snow Valley, I'd have no idea who Greg White was. Now, there's some aspects that might not be a bad thing if I didn't know Greg.
Oh, come on, man. We know about your text chains. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the hangout group. But he definitely keeps things entertaining. That's for sure with that. But guys like Jamie Smith, who you talked about, and now with Jamie coming to Solon, we'll actually coach against each other. That's a big rivalry. Mount Vernon, Solon, Dave Schlaubaugh, different guys like that. And then obviously relationship with Don Showalter as well, has been really big for my coaching career. I'm very fortunate that, if I've ever needed, a reference or anything from a basketball standpoint, Donnie's always one of the first ones to offer to do that for me. And that is solely, out of that relationship that's been built through Snow Valley. And I think one of the other great things about going to clinics, to camps is you pick up little things, and it's kind of like going to a clinic where, you're not going to implement every single thing that you see at a clinic, or you hear somebody talk about. But you might see somebody that runs a clinician, or shows a drill. That's something I can take back with me, or something that I can use down the road as well. Or just little things is how do different people interact with different types of kids at those camps too. And I think it also, when you go and do stuff like that, especially Snow Valley or even Iowa, where you've got large numbers of kids, it challenges you as a coach. You've got to figure out, especially I've been fortunate at Snow Valley to be a clinician in a lot of different areas throughout the years, and run some different clinics. This past summer I ran the defensive clinics for one of the age groups. So it really challenges you as a coach, because you have to figure out a way to keep, maybe it's 200 kids active, in those drills that you're doing. How do you involve the coaches that are there with you at the baskets to work as well. So it kind of pushes you as a coach as well. But for me, the biggest thing is the relationships. Just going up and being able to see those different guys. A lot of those guys, that's the only time of year that you might see those guys. Makes it really special as you continue to build those type of relationships you build at those camps, when you continue to communicate with those people throughout the year, not just the 1 or 2 weeks that you maybe see them during the summer. But I can definitely tell you that there's no better teaching camp out there than Snow Valley. It is a you have to be passionate about basketball, to be involved with it. But if you are, either from a coaching standpoint or from a playing standpoint, there's no better spot to go to. And I'll tell just about anybody that wants to know which camp to attend, and that's the one.
Yeah, we've heard so many good things now up to this point from the guys that we've talked to about it, and obviously we had an opportunity to talk to Coach Showalter as well, and it just sounds like a place that, again, if you love basketball and you're passionate about the game, that you can go and not only be able to share your knowledge, but as you described, go in there with an open mind and a growth mindset, and have an idea that, hey, I'm gonna learn and grow as a coach. And I think that that's something that anybody who's good at the coaching profession understands, that there's very little that we actually know, and there's a lot of guys out there that are doing great and innovative things that we can take back and use for our program, and ultimately use for the benefit of our kids. So it's we want to wrap it up here, Matt. We're getting close to the witching hour. So before we get out, is there anything that we did not talk about tonight that you want to hit on? If there is, you can go ahead and share it. If there isn't, if you wouldn't mind sharing out how people can get in contact with you, if anybody wants to reach out and just ask you a question, or maybe connect after hearing you on the podcast, if you'd share how they can get in touch with you, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I love to talk about what we do defensively. I think what we do is unique and gives you a chance, and just in talk basketball in general, from what we do. My Twitter handle is @Coach Haddy, so CoachHaddy. Our girls basketball program Twitter is @MV Mustang Hoops. You can reach me via email, coachhaddy@gmail.com. Any of those would be great. I love talking basketball. I would love to to reach out to anybody that's got questions on anything that we do defensively, anything that we do in practice. How we instill the toughness that we expect out of our kids on a daily basis. Any of that stuff. I would love to talk to. Would love to give anybody any good Greg White stories that they want to hear as well. I'm more than welcome to listen to or to talk to anybody that would like to reach out.
Matt, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule tonight to jump on with us. It's been a pleasure to have you on. We've really enjoyed the conversation. And to everyone out there, thanks for listening, and we will catch you on our next episode. If you're looking for a great way to spend the holidays playing some basketball, please join us at one of our Head Start basketball holiday camps on December 27th and 28th, 2018. We'll have a camp at Hoop Guru Courthouse in Hinckley and also at St. Paschal Baylon School in Highland Heights. The Head Start basketball holiday camps will emphasize the fundamentals of basketball with individual attention given to each camper. You'll improve your basketball skills and have a ton of fun at the Head Start basketball holiday camp. To register or get more information, please visit our website, www.headstartbasketball.com. Thanks for listening to the Hoop Heads podcast, brought to you by Head Start Basketball.